Welcome to an all-new episode of Presidential Perspective. This is a piece of our exclusive multimedia marketing partnership with Alfred University and the Saxons, featuring bi-monthly our conversation here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, with the president of Alfred University, Mark Zupan, and myself, Dan Tortora. We have topics all throughout the year. We just had a couple weeks ago our inaugural episode of Presidential Perspective, and we're already back to having Mark here on the show once again. So Mark, how are you?
Glad to be back, Dan. Thanks for the invitation, and hope the audience is doing well.
Absolutely. And I know that, you and I have kind of in the initial conversation, we open up the door to a lot of different pieces of different things that are happening on campus, as well as alumni engagement and whatnot. And speaking on what's happening on campus, we were looking at the fact that there's going to be the Saxon Hill Athletics Outdoor Complex that's going to be coming into fruition here. That's being built, and would love to jump into Saxon Hill and the outdoor complex. I know we've spoken about it off the air, and I'd love to share with everybody what is coming to Alfred University.
It's one of our larger projects, investments at the university over the years. We've owned land 1.8 miles south of our main campus since the early 1960s. And we've used the facility for scrimmages, but we are going to be turning it into a much more engaging complex, largely thanks to philanthropic support. It's a $28.6 million project. It'll involve adding a baseball diamond, an outdoor track and field with facilities for all track and field events, two other practice fields, locker room areas, athletic training spaces, stands. It'll also allow us to better live into our space. So being outdoors is good for your mental health and wellness. So beyond our student athletes, to provide additional intramural recreational opportunities. It's adjacent to our Cuneo Equestrian Center, the Bromley Daggett Equestrian Park that's part of that center. We have 3 different equestrian teams. And we have a fabulous Foster Lake that also adjoins this property, and we've been using it extensively over the last several months for classes, group gatherings, rowing facilities, swimming facilities. So it's we want to live into our space much more fully going forward. And the Saxon Hill Complex is made possible through philanthropic support. We're aiming to raise at least half of it through philanthropy. We'll be running a shuttle bus from the main campus, even though it's only 1.8 miles away, to make it as convenient as possible. And the bus will make stops at the Equestrian Center at Foster Lake at different points on campus. So we're excited about what the future is going to bring for our student athletes and our general student experience.
And we're speaking about a year since the Board of Trustees approved this back on July 19th of 2022, unanimously approving the project to go into the design phase here and for the Saxon Hill Complex that, like you said, is going to be 1.8 miles south of campus to bring this together. So, we hear about complexes coming up or different ideas and things happening at colleges and universities, but you don't see all the time and effort and consistent work that goes into this. And like I made note of, July 19th, 2022, and here we are sitting in 2023, in the summer of 2023, just what this past year has been and all the things that happened behind the scenes since the unanimous approval by the Board of Trustees that people don't see.
Thanks for doing the homework on that, Dan. And there are a lot of moving parts that have needed to be brought together. So while the full board approved it, and we have a board of 37 members, to make the board effective, we're split into committees. And so we have a Buildings and Grounds Committee that helped us with the design of the complex, making sure we were working on different iterations of that. They ended up approving it. Then we have a Finance Committee that looks at financing options, loans, private placements, timing of philanthropy, extent of the philanthropy, to make sure that when we overlay this to our overall budget, that this is a budget enhancing activity. We're estimating to, in steady state, add 175 students, because we'll be adding a baseball team. We've already hired a coach and are bringing 25 new baseball players to campus. They'll be using some adjoining facilities until this complex gets built. We've hired a women's rugby coach, and we'll be deepening that team, men's rugby as well, women's field hockey. And with adding the women's sports, we'll be able to add men's volleyball on our main campus. We've also explored archery and then men's and women's, and through an outdoor track and field, we estimate we'll add at least 40 additional students through having the facilities to be able to well serve the students. And then we have a university advancement committee that worked with another segment of the board on timing of philanthropy prospects, vetting them. We're looking right now at seven-figure prospects to lay the keystone for the foundation. They're called Tier 1 prospects. We have a couple important meetings coming up over the next few weeks from people that have indicated an interest in supporting this. But then we'll be going to Tier 2 and 3 because there are opportunities to name scoreboards, to name benches, so that there's a broader audience involved. We had a very generous alum from the Syracuse, Utica area recently, for example, surprised us with a $25,000 gift toward women's field hockey because he has a daughter that's been a field hockey player. And so we will park that money when it comes time to hire a coach and get equipment for women's field hockey. That'll get us a head start on that particular component of the project.
And you speak on this, obviously through philanthropy and, bringing in donors, finding the right fits and doing your due diligence. I love what you just got into, because when people talk about, oh, we need to raise this money, it's like, okay, well, just get the money from wherever you can get it from. That's not what you're saying. You're saying, let's make sure that we bring in the money, the philanthropy that we need, but let's vet and go through the process and find the right people and the right connections to make. It's not just any old check that you can find anywhere. It's purposeful connections, bridges, networking, and the value of who you're bringing in and why you're bringing them in, because that name, like you said, could be on a scoreboard, could be, on a field or whatever it may be. So I would love to go a little bit deeper into that, Mark, because in today's world, we hear, I need $100,000, so let's go get $100,000. Not, I need $100,000, so let's go find the right people to provide that opportunity.
And it is, you need a research group that identifies who has the capacity, and then being able to develop the relationships, what they're interested in, and advancement activities for a nonprofit like ours. It's very much solving a puzzle. What do we do as part of our mission as a university that aligns with what a donor wants to see accomplished? And ultimately, it's the donor's call. Had a donor in my first dean job at Arizona who developed a very well thought out strategic plan. This guy lived in Cleveland, successful business person. When we went to see him, he said, no, I want to give to the cheerleading business students who are cheerleaders. And that was nowhere one of our strategic priorities. But we had some business school students who were part of the cheerleading team, needed the support, so we were able to make that happen. A year later, the donor ended up making a seven-figure gift to redo our IT lab, which was a strategic priority. So had we said to the donor, no, we don't want your support for cheerleading, we probably would have scotched the deal on the IT. So making sure donors are pleased with the return on investment, that you're stewarding the gift. Had a mentor once say, getting a gift is like an iceberg. It's 5% of the battle. Then it's how you steward it. And it's the old Ben Franklin quote, if you'd like to have somebody help you, go to the people who've helped you before. But a predicate for that is that you will have had to show them that you did right by their philanthropy and that they are pleased with the impact of their giving.
Yeah, coming here from Mark Zupan, the president of Alfred University, in our presidential perspective piece, exclusive to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora in our multimedia marketing partnership with the Saxons of Alfred University, coming to you bi-monthly here. Back when this decision was unanimously approved for the Saxon Hill Complex, you obviously spoke on some of these pieces, but I wanted to, once again, reiterate these bullet points for the Saxon Hill project. Adding 2 turf fields, a baseball diamond, an outdoor track, and additional softball playing facilities, which will support the university's existing intercollegiate football, men's and women's soccer, men's and women's lacrosse, and men's and women's track and field programs, enable the addition of new sports like you had mentioned, field hockey, baseball, archery, women's rugby, and men's volleyball, provide enhanced opportunities for cross-country track and field and intramural and club sports, provide regular shuttle service, which you had mentioned, between the Saxon Hill Complex and campus, increase student prospect visits, recruitment, and retention rates for the university. And you had stated in the 120 plus here, and in the original notes, it was realize an additional 125 more students each academic year and continue to build upon the student opportunities already in place on Saxon Hill, which will include Alfred University's world-class equestrian center and Foster Lake recreational area. So to kind of just reiterate those points that you're speaking about today, that a year ago, this was the purpose, this was the plan, and a year later, you're still repeating those same things, like you said, to make sure that, you know, philanthropy is being put in the right place, and that you don't just gain the money, that little piece of the iceberg, but that you foster a positive relationship and you build that connection and show them what they'll be receiving. I think that donors and people that are thinking about giving in the philanthropy world to Alfred University like the fact that a year ago, the plan that was set in place is the plan that we're still talking about right now, with the same bullet points and the same hopes for the upcoming present and future of the university.
And we've continued to stress test it, Dan. So additional research. So we brought in an outside consultant who had built 3 complexes. He'd been a CFO at a university. He'd been a number 2 at a university, and he'd been a university president. In each of these places, he built a complex like this. Were our estimates in terms of revenue and cost on the money. We also have hired a terrific athletic director, associate vice president, Deb Stewart. She had an extensive run. She's a 3-sport athlete herself, has done Division I athletic directing at Hobart William Smith, retired for a while. We had the good fortune to lure her back. And she actually showed us that we were light on some of our estimates because we weren't counting the addition of men's rugby. Our women's rugby estimates based on her experience were actually low. So that's where we've, as further research has revealed, we're actually shooting for 175 in steady state, as opposed to we were being more on the conservative side last year with a little less evidence that we had researched at that time. Costs have also gone up since last summer, partly construction costs, but partly as we've gone through the design phase. We want to make sure we do it right. So our most recent estimate right now is 28.6 million. And then in the grand scheme of things, it's not just student athletics that matter at Alfred University. So we've had similarly large projects. We're a year and a half away, for example, from finishing a major foundry project on campus. It'll add 120 students in steady state-of-the-art foundry. So we'll be able to expand our sculpture 3-dimensional studies program, add digital fab labs, metallurgy programs, and build more bridges between art and design and engineering. So that's a $16 million project funded by philanthropy, and then also by the SUNY Construction Fund. And that had a lot of any of these projects has a lot of moving pieces. We had to find a donor in that case for a distributed boiler system because the building was foundry. We had was a central heating plant, so we had to move to a distributed boiler system. Yeah. And that was a $6 million move, but we had a trustee, Michelle Cohen, who generously gave, and I've never been at a place where somebody's committed $6 million to a distributed boiler system, but she could see if I make this happen, that will make these programs happen on campus. And we've also been revising our engineering buildings, again, through state SUNY Construction Fund support, and we're doing a lot more in STEAM. So these are all part of a broader piece because there are a lot of different aspects that go on at a university like ours.
Well, you know, and you discuss this, you know, all these different things that you're doing at Alfred University. And like I said, when I came onto campus, you go up this mountain of sorts, and as you keep driving up, you think, okay, well, it ends here, and it keeps going, and you drive down one road and it extends out farther. Then you come down thinking you're on the same road, you're on a different road. This consistent building, growing, looking at something that you have, how can you tweak it? How can you make it better? How can you advance? Constantly looking at the student and student athlete experience. Just what you can say about being the president of a university that doesn't just sit on their hands and live in this status quo world. There's always something to do, somewhere to get better. And, you know, when I came onto campus, there was construction going around, you know, campus and whatnot. So I mean, I saw it firsthand, but to be at a university and to be president of a university that doesn't believe that you should just stand still, what does that mean to you?
They're wonderful opportunities, and getting to build with people and ultimately for the benefit of our students and what they'll end up doing in the world. Another major project we've had over the years, we have a 54 alumnus, Marlon Miller, who's given us close to $100 million. Cares a lot about the arts. I think you saw the Ceramic Art Museum as you were going to the hairpin turn. You probably saw two wonderful performing arts buildings, and probably about 45 million total in giving toward those three buildings. We're in the process right now of starting a search for a director of our performing arts division, and that specific charge to that person will be help us recruit 30 more majors to dance, theater, music, performing arts technology and design. So if you know of anybody out there's a listener that might be interested in an opportunity like that, you get to work with creative people, you get to recruit students. Next week, we have a Most Arts Festival that's starting, and we'll be hosting dinners at the home, and the Sun will be inviting music teachers too, just so they can see the facilities. And then when it comes time to their students to think about where they should apply, they'll be thinking more about Alfred University. So to your point, you keep on building, and philanthropists give you greater opportunities to build for the sake of the next generation.
Why do you feel that people want to give back to Alfred University? What is it about who you are and the uniqueness of the Saxon way that you feel people want to be connected, and they want to give, and they want to be purposeful with how they give?
It's a great question, and I think it comes back to the iceberg analogy. When somebody's had a meaningful experience that they could see how their life was made better, and that was made possible by past philanthropists, it primes the pump for them to think, how can I in turn with my success make the next generation? So if they hadn't had such a meaningful experience, we wouldn't be so blessed. So we're the beneficiaries now of what people did, the stewardship 40 years ago. Marlon Miller, the person I mentioned, who's given 100 million.
Yeah.
He was the then Dean of Engineering and an alumnus who gave his family a tour, provided a very personal touch, wrote a recommendation letter to Harvard Business School to get into the MBA program, identified the first job in Reading, Pennsylvania. Had John McMahon not done that, we would look a lot differently now as a campus. And what we seek to inculcate in our faculty staff, every student that steps on our campus has the potential to be the next Marlon Miller. If we do that experience right, not mass produce, but one by one, how do we create a meaningful student experience for them?
And like you said, and it's something that you said to me the day that we had our initial Saxon Spotlight and conversation. You said we don't manufacture education here. It's not, we don't mass produce education here. And when you said that, I remember back in the video, I made mention of it immediately because I had never heard anybody say that in 19 plus years of broadcasting, to utilize that terminology. We don't mass produce the student experience. It's not something that we just kind of put out there and say one size fits all. That, to me, in and of itself, should be the selling point for Alfred University, be it any one of the athletic programs, be it any one of your majors, anything at all, of why to come to Alfred University, because it isn't a mass production. It is individual. You want each person to feel like they have a place on campus. They made their mark on campus. They're cared for. Because sometimes when a student athlete gets recruited and they say yes and they commit, well, then it's on to the next one. The true test of what type of leader you are and what type of coach you are and how you foster relationships is once you get those 25 people to say yes, and you're on to 26, 27, 28, are you still calling those 25? Are you checking in? Do you remember their birthday, that their grandmother just had a celebration, that their parents just had a wedding anniversary? Do you take the time to continue to build upon the relationships that you have? Once you move on to the recruitment of another, do you remember everybody else? And that is something that I think is a beautiful thing when done right and put into action in society, that once someone says, yes, Alfred University, I'll come there. I'm going to give you an opportunity to wow me, that you remember them, you care about them, that they aren't just a number on campus. They're not just tuition that goes into the fund, but they're a human being. They're Stacy, they're Sarah, they're Pete, they're, Kyle, and that you've done a tremendous job, Mark, and I have to give you credit for this, is that you'll tell stories and you won't say we have a student that I think was in psychology, or there was a student that I'm pretty sure was on the women's basketball team. You say by name, this is the student, this is who they are, this is what they do, this is how I interacted with them, this is how it affected me. That is not something that happens everywhere. That's an art, and it comes from a place of care. If you don't care about the individual, then you cannot tell the stories about individual experiences with them, because you have to take the time.
Yeah, to take a case in point, Alyssa DeMillo, who you interviewed, who's a student in our College of Business and on our basketball team, and just won the top sportsmanship award in the Empire 8. And when you were talking to Alyssa, how she brought up Mike Moskowitz, our women's basketball coach, how almost on a nightly basis is providing some life coaching. He looks at himself as a teacher and not just a basketball coach. So wisdom that Alyssa can garner that'll serve her well in life, or how Mark Lewis, she's noted him, our College of Business dean, as a mentor. Mark's a local kid, went into the Air Force, served our country, was a senior VP, chief technology officer, New York Stock Exchange. We were lucky enough to lure him back first. We just had a course open up. He showed up at our HR office, and the dean then needed to find a person literally in 24 hours. Mark showed up within that period. One course turned to 3, turned into his colleagues saying, you'd make a great dean. He's been a great dean, and he's worked very closely with Alyssa to make sure through her injuries that she could keep her coursework on track. And so, yeah, the more we can keep building on that culture, it is a point of distinction. I think, like you said, it serves an organization in good stead, and certainly it'll serve Alfred University in good stead if we can keep practicing it.
So as a final note, we started speaking on the Saxon Hill Complex. Mark, when you step onto campus, how would you describe what you see and how you feel when you come to work?
It's as close as you get to the fountain of youth then. The opportunity to interact with the next generation, constantly fresh set of ideas of looking at stuff. And you may be around a subject for 40 years, but then somebody with a fresh perspective will have a completely new take on it.
Yeah.
And the chance to make a difference. We each go through challenging times, so the chance to check in on somebody, how you're doing, finding whether it's given directions to a particular office or dealing with a tough exam result. These are all learning opportunities. Deb Stewart, our athletic director, likes to say there's no growth in the comfort zone, there's no comfort in the growth zone. And universities are growth zones. And the more we can tap into them, they're also joyous places, but a lot of the joy comes from the personal growth that they afford to our students and to our faculty staff.
Yeah, and getting, what do they say? Become comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yep.
And that's really the only way to get anything done in life. I firmly agree with that, because I've been there a million times, and I look forward to the next million opportunities to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And as you grow with these, growing pains, also come the opportunity to see something really special. And growth does not come without challenge. And those that accept that challenge have the opportunity to truly grow into who they want to be, and maybe even better. So as the Saxon Hill Complex continues to grow, and as our students and student athletes and teachers, faculty, administration, and coaches continue to grow, we will continue to tell their story. We've only just begun here at Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, bringing you the presidential perspective with President Mark Zupan of Alfred University and the Saxons. Mark, as always, I appreciate your time, and go Saxons.
Go Saxons indeed. Enjoy the rest of the week, Dan.